the South Asian region. So I now give floor to my friend Barrister Hamid Bashani, who is an expert on the social and legal aspects of the rights of minorities in Pakistan. And he has dealt with many human rights violations of the minority communities in various forums throughout the globe and particularly in United Nations. So, Barrister Bashani Saab.
Thank you. Good morning or good evening, whatever the case may be, to everybody, and salam and adab and namaste and namaskar. Uh, I think it was very interesting to listen Manzoor Saab on the situation in reference to the Islamic ideology and Islamist politics in Pakistan. Very interesting topic, but I think needs totally a separate place to discuss that. So I would focus on the social and political problems of the minorities in Pakistan with reference to the constitutional and legal framework they have to live in and they have to work with. Unfortunately, we have been repeating this on forums like this for last many years, that Pakistan in a nutshell is a living hell for the minorities, no matter who they are, maybe Hindus, Christians, Sikh, or Buddhist, or any other community. Living hell, when I say, I really feel it with the depth of my heart, in a sense that we Muslim, we believe that non-Muslim will not be allowed into the paradise. So either they have to go to the hell over there and wait for the Allah to decide when their fate would be decided, and then they will be allowed to enter into Jannat or paradise, if ever. I'm not sure, and I don't want to get into that, because then it becomes an issue of Islamic clerics who qualifies for that. But that's what exactly happened in Pakistan. We created a paradise and we decided that it does not belong to the people of such and such faith. And there are so many examples if we go into the detail, but I would just quote Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and specifically his star speech on 11th of August 1947, where he clearly declared that the non-Muslim would be the equal citizen of Pakistan, despite other things, beside other things. There are lots of things. He actually put a very clear sketch of Pakistan, at least what was in his mind. So obviously, that is another point of moot, I would say, that how come a man who was creating a homeland on the name of religion was advocating the equality and secular state of affairs for the people in Pakistan. That's another moot, and as I said, there are so many points which needs to be mooted. But since we have to discuss this thing, so I will leave it here, but I will take his words that the citizen of Pakistan would be equal and non-Muslims would be equal. But soon after that, as Mr. Manzoor quoted, Khwaja Ghulam Muhammad declared that I don't believe in that the religion could be a private matter, that a state like this could be without having Islamic system imposed on it and things like that, which actually shows a very grim situation and development which took place after death of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. What Muhammad Ali Jinnah did in his life, that if you look at his cabinet, which was actually not his cabinet, but in his presence, the cabinet of Pakistan, you cannot call it a cabinet of a state which could be Islamic or even inclined to Islamic for that purpose. For example, Sir Zafrullah Khan as a external minister, or there are so many examples that how many people they were there, like Hindus and Christians and Ahmadis, as a minister of the state working on behalf of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and on behalf of the parliament. But soon after that, as Mr. Manzoor quoted, the politicians, they came out with their own agenda, and I would call it a real and true agenda because that was the purpose of the state according to them. They actually never bought the notions and ideology of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah for the creation of Pakistan. As I said in many occasions elsewhere, that soon after August 1947, a degree was issued from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Ministry of Defense to the press and publications of Pakistan, asking them to not publish the statements of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, which also include this 11th of August speech. And thereafter, whenever he tried to explain that what kind of Pakistan he wanted, so the direction was to the editors of the newspapers, which were very limited at that time, or Radio Pakistan, which was the only broadcasting corporation at that time, saying that the statement of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah are actually creating confusion into the nation and confusion into the ideology of Pakistan, and is confusing the two nation theory, which was the base of the creation of Pakistan. So we have to be very careful to not allow the statements like this. So from that point of time, I think Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah became totally irrelevant in the affairs of Pakistan, and he had no say. So that what happened, that is not just Khwaja Ghulam Muhammad, but thereafter, for example, whatever the legislation was done, for example, 3 Constitution, 1956, 1962, and 73, starting from what they call it famous Qaraardad-e-Pakistan, the objectives, where they declared that why Pakistan was created and where it should end up. If you put all those things together, I would say that it was a total takeover of clerics, Islamic fundamentalists, although we didn't use this word at that point of time, and Islamic terror, which we call terrorism, no extremism, we can call it, that the people who were not willing to tolerate any other religion or ethnic group or culture into the mainstream, because they were thinking that they are entitled to have this country only for themselves because they created this, and the purpose of this country was to do some kind of experiment on Islam, which they did. And I think I feel very sorry for the Islam for that purpose, how they insulted it and how they misuse it for their own political purpose. So this thing, the ideology of Pakistan was actually running parallel to Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah since he started asking for creation of Pakistan or a separate homeland, but it was not that forceful. In the beginning, it was ideology of a religion. So it was a religious issue that there are some religious clerics or extremist people, they are asking for an Islamic state. Then it turned into a political ideology where they really influenced these politicians who had no background, no legitimacy, no wisdom, and they blackmailed them and they forced them into buying their version and their narratives about the creation of Pakistan and its future, that it has to be Islamic, otherwise it doesn't make sense. And then with the passage of time, it turned into a national ID, question of national ID. First it was a religious issue, then it was a political issue, and then it became a issue of national identification, where everybody in Pakistan now kind of feel compelled to follow their identity as Islamic identity, not Pakistan as a nation state or as a secular country. Forget about it. There is no room for that so far. So this thing, what happened when we say that what Islam says, as Manzoor said, I think this debate is now, although very interesting academically, but practically it has become irrelevant, because whatever the clerics they want to do, they have done that successfully. Whatever Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Khatim al-Nabiyyin had said, there are so many good things, all of them obviously, but they have nothing to do with the society of Pakistan. If we compare those things one by one, what the clerics are doing, what politicians are doing, and what the state of Islam is doing on the name of Islamic State, that would be very, very insulting to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Khatim al-Nabiyyin, and his followers and people like this. So I am not going to get into that. However, I will get into constitution a little bit. And why I would do that? Because to me, the Constitution of Pakistan is a perfect example and a document reflecting the deep, deep contradictions in the society, and deep contradictions and the hypocritical role of the politicians of Pakistan and the policymakers and the lawmakers of Pakistan who are sitting in different houses of Pakistan. For example, I would say that the Constitution, Article 25, I may be quoting, this is very academic or in a court of law, so I wouldn't be quoting exactly the articles, but I'm still quoting. If there is something wrong, I'm asking for excuse. So Article 25 of the Constitution of Pakistan says that all the citizens of Pakistan are equal. So that means Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, whatever, whoever is living in Pakistan is equal. Article 5 says that everybody in Pakistan, irrespective of their faith or religion, are free to freely profess and express their religion. And then Article 33 says that this is the responsibility of the state of Pakistan to make sure that there is no racial, tribal, or sectarian discrimination based on the religion, and they are promoting all of them on the equal basis. These are the examples which you can present in front of the Constitution of the United States of America, or Constitution of France, or the Constitution of India, or any other democratic country who could be proud of having a very, very progressive and secular constitution in their country. These three clauses. But when we read these three clauses, we also read some of the clauses. For example, in the Articles 2 of the Constitution of Pakistan, it is stated very clearly that Islam would be the religion of the state, official religion. So after saying all those articles that everybody is equal, everybody is free to express and confess and practice their religion, and the state is irrelevant or impartial in these all practices, then you put right there at the head of everything in Constitution 2 that Islam is the official religion of the state. Thereby, you actually discriminate against all the religions, and you just single them out from the constitutional protections you might offer to everybody. But that's not enough. If you go in further detail, you will see Article 41, subsection 2, that nobody shall qualify for the
Yes.
sorry?
Sorry, yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Shall not qualify if he's not a Muslim to become the Prime Minister of, President of Pakistan at that time. So that means to be the President of Pakistan, you have to be Muslim. And in Article 25, you say that all citizens of Pakistan are equal. Either I do not understand English, or for that purpose Urdu, which I am so proud of in writing and reading and everything, that how you can reconcile these two things. That are the contradiction, I think my dear friend Manzoor has already pointed out, that is the hypocrisy of the clerics. which was imposed on the whole nation of Pakistan, saying that we can make the people fool without any problem because we have all those Islamic authority and vocabulary and things like this. So I think it's a big challenge to reconcile these two articles, 25 and 2, 41 and 2, and then you go on 227 subsection 1 that all law shall be in conjunction with the Islamic. So if anybody has any kind of doubt that Pakistan is not a Islamic state, so I don't know how to turn a state into Islamic one. If you have that kind of constitution that you are not allowed to make any law which is not in conjunction with the Islamic law, so that means you are just kicking out all the minorities, their religions, and most of the religions are even uh, existing before Islam and had lots of, their own fiqh and their own laws and things like this, but you don't bother them to be included or considering into, which will take you to the civil law, which will take you the family law and all the, lifestyle and things like that. So if you have a constitution like this, how many minutes I have spoken, Mansab? Do you have, I have some
No, no,
time?
no. Please go ahead. Please take your time. No problem.
Yeah, so if you put all these contradictions together, obviously you are putting people into a great trial to find out what is the purpose of the state and where the state is standing and what kind of kindness we have for the, which the Islam is preaching for the minorities and what kind of brutalities we are unfolding to them. These all things if you put together. So that would make you understand why I said that Pakistan is a living hell for the minorities, because having a constitution like this and having the constitutional clauses to protect the minorities in a country like this is not just Pakistan. In any country, if you put a system in place like this, and for me, constitution is a system in place to protect the rights of your citizen and to promote the rights of their citizen. And you close both doors, protection and promotion. And then you put minorities on the mercy of the society, which is already biased because of the preachings and propagation of the clerics, which is already biased. I'm sorry to say that society is overwhelmingly biased against the minorities. Let me give you an example. If in your mosque, non-stop 24 hours, your cleric is preaching against the Gair Muslim means people of other faith and people who don't believe in your faith or people of other religions and things like that. And you tell the people that why it's important to be Muslim, because if you are not Muslim, you cannot enter into Jannah, into the paradise. God will not be happy with you. You are dirty, you are stupid, you are a loser, whatever the word you can bring if you are not a Muslim. And then you expect those people in the streets and in the mosques and in the bazaars to go and pay their respect to the minorities when they know that they are in a situation like this, in practically speaking. And then what happens that whatever, for example, anybody try to interfere with minorities, which is like not just a interfere, for example, to take their women, girls and get married with them and things like this, or force them to change their religion, and they go to to ask for the protection from the law, then how the law is going to protect them when you have a constitutional framework like this, and under that constitutional framework, your men in uniform, the police wale, how they are going to be impartial and help a person who is an applicant and who is being persecuted or who is the victim of some kind of injustice in a society like this. And that goes on and goes on and goes on. Because once you have put a system in place which says itself that minorities has no proper place in this society. They are not good people in very, very layman language. And they cannot be protected equally as the citizen of Pakistan. And all these things, then obviously if the society is reacting, because most of the people would be not that much educated, not that much sensitive, or for that purpose, maybe they're not that much kind and understanding. So obviously, whatever they will do, that would be against the interest, rights of the minorities, and that's what is happening during last 70 years. It getting worse and worse. I don't want to get into statistics, but let me tell you one thing. Look at the numbers in 1947 and look at the numbers of the minorities today in Pakistan, and compare with that, compare their status at that time, that there were like 3 out of 5, 6 ministers, 3 of them were minorities, and look at their status today. Look at the people, how many Muslims even were killed, like Sulman Tasir, who were trying to advocate or protect the rights of the minorities. So if you can kill a influential Muslim politician, what about the person who is speaking from the minorities on their behalf and from their own ranks and files? So considering this situation, I think this is very disappointing. And I would propose that the only solution to this is not just reciting the Quran Sharif and Hadith and stressing upon the point that what Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Khatamun Nabiyyin has said, or what Hazrat Umar Farooq said, or this said, or that said, uh, because we have done that a lot. We need the practical amendment in the Constitution of Pakistan, protecting the citizen of that country, irrespective of their religion. And that is a thing which I think we don't need to repeat. So having said that, I think I will conclude on that. However, I am available and open for the for answering any question if somebody wants to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barrister Bashani Saab. You highlighted the contradictions within the Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan. You flagged the inadequacies of the system which is prevalent there. And you said that all laws are directed towards the discrimination and repression of minorities in Pakistan. I would rather amplify your argument by saying that if we look at Article 2, which declares that Islam shall be the state religion of Pakistan, and Article 31 says that the government must foster the Islamic way of life. And Article 227(1) states that all existing laws shall be brought in conformity with the injunctions of Islam as laid down in the Holy Quran, in this part referred to as injunctions of Islam. And no law shall be enacted which is repugnant to such injunctions. Right. You also highlighted the contradictions that even Article 20 of the Constitution, which enshrines every citizen's right to profess, practice, propagate his religion, and that every religious denomination and every sect thereof shall have right to establish, maintain, and manage its religious institution, is subject to law, public order, and morality, and is thus contradicted in law and practice when it comes to the rights of religious minorities in Pakistan. So therefore, Pakistan, when it adopted the constitution in 1973 under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, it was a shift, according to me, from Jinnah's dream of separating religion from politics. So therefore, for the last 3 or 4 decades now, when the Islamic jihadis are almost ruling the roost in Pakistan, and the military and the other functionaries of the government are in tandem with that. It started from Ziaul Haq, who made it turn into a very rabid, repressive regime against the minorities. And he enacted the very severe blasphemy laws. And during that time also, the Muslims, subsects of the Muslims like Ahmadiyas and others were declared as minority. And also, it's not a discrimination against the non-Islamic religious groups. It is a discrimination. The Constitution has a contradiction of its discrimination against all the sects who are smaller in number. So, therefore, the minority concept in Pakistan is within the same Islamic dominion. The number of those groupings which are lesser than the majority is a minority. And then there is a ethno-religious minorities as well. So two categories of minorities are being subjected to discrimination, repression, and all the oppression is being inflicted on them. So having said that, I said, what is its fallout? I'll come to that in my last intervention. But I would request my friend Najib Muhammad Kidwai, who is temperamentally and ideologically a revolutionary, a progressive. He has a history of being left of the center. From the student days, he has continuously held that conviction dearer to him. And he has lived through this, as you said, it's a hell on earth. He has lived through this hell on earth called Pakistan. I want his very frank and fair opinion about the status of minorities in Pakistan according to him. Najib Kidwai, floor is yours. Sunil, where is he?
He is there, but we can't see him.
He is there, he is there.
Kidwai Sahab, you are very much connected.
Najib Saab, you are very much connected. Floor is yours. Kidwai Saab.
Looks like frozen.
Maybe there is
Is he-
something wrong on his connection. Let me see.
Yeah, looks like frozen.
It's frozen, yeah.
It is frozen turbulence.
So Bansab, can we move on to the next panelist and then come back
Yeah,
to
we-
Kidwai Sahab?
we will, certainly. We have a very rising star called Junaid Mir. He is a very well-educated young leader from Kashmir. We welcome Muzaffar Shah Sahab. He has also arrived from Srinagar and he had to face some hassle at the airport. We are sorry for facing that hassle, but we welcome you.
Thank you, Ban Saab. Thank you, all of you.
And we have Junaid, who is a well-read person. And he is giving an impression that he is thorough at the and socio-political dynamics of South Asian region. And he knows the contradiction within Pakistan, contradiction within the region, security
I think
situation.
Bansab, I think he is back. Najib is back.
Is he back?
It
Sunil?
looks like he is moving now.
Yes, he is back.
But he still seems to be still.
He still seems to be frozen. I think if
Yeah.
someone has his number, can you ask him to disconnect and log in again? That would be the
Yeah.
best thing to do.
I can try that.
Yeah, if you can send him a message to log off and log in again.
So meantime, we can request Mr. Junaid to please give his thoughts on the subject. Mr. Junaid Mir, please.
Thank you, sir. A very good evening to all the dignitaries present in this virtual discussion on the status of minorities in Pakistan. It gives me a great pleasure to be a part of this wonderful gathering, and I find myself to be honored for having been invited to speak in front of such wonderful brains who have tremendous value and laurels in their respective fields. I am more of a political person, so pardon me for taking a political approach in explaining where I stand about the topic of discussion today. And for me, Pakistan is a country that is a contradiction to most of the ideals that were set when it was being made. And Pakistan, over its course of development, could not, at first remain united and broke off into two, and the prime reason being discrimination and subjugation of the eastern part called Bangladesh. We see the minorities in Pakistan are not like normal minorities whose protection features on the priorities of the government when it comes to its internal affairs. A very small electorate that is almost voiceless relies on the goodwill of the government with zero social acceptance for them in the social milieu of Pakistan. Minorities in Pakistan are a burden on the state because the state was not formed on the ideals of equality and freedom. Pakistan, I think, and I've analyzed, is a state that superficially called for unity in the name of Islam, and by declaring itself as a mono-religious country, it's right at that moment disregarded the citizens who were not a part of Islam as a religion. Now a country, we have to see that constitutionally recognizes Islam as the guiding force for the functioning itself will be contradicting itself if it thinks of encouraging social, religious, and political equality. We have to see the constitutional provisions for the protection of minorities are yet another manifestation of state-supported discrimination. The country calls for the glory of Islam, and this slogan automatically disrespects and disregards the non-Muslim population of the country. I'm sorry to say this, but over years, the oppression of minorities in Pakistan has not received enough attention in the global media, which has not done much to highlight the unjust and oppressive social structuring of the country. You know, I think Pakistan is a country where forced convergence are a norm now. Non-Muslims are almost untouchables, and the economic condition of these minorities are, deplorable, which is a fact known to every panelist. And Pakistan, as a majorly Muslim country, has taken the rights of minorities for granted. If we are, to see the literal manifestation of how supremacy of one set of citizens is impressed upon its smaller numbered population, I think Pakistan is the country to refer to. Be it, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, Ahmadiyas, Jains, or Buddhists, not a single minority has any significant social honor accorded to it by the majority of the country. In fact, Pakistan is the country where conversion through force is encouraged by the society and the shameful crime is celebrated. The government has nothing to say against this, as the institutions are corrupted by the religion hegemony of Muslim clergy, who enjoy authority in the state using the card of religion. For me, a true democracy never lets any of its citizens suffer and get humiliated unless he or she is a criminal. But in Pakistan, if you are born into a non-majority religion, you are a liability and shame for your family in the society. You are discriminated, questioned on your beliefs, forced to attend Islamic education in school, and humiliated for having a religion belief other than Islam. I don't want to bore the audience, with figures, because all the numbers are available online. You can check this anytime. And we see, so I want to make us realize and understand that how cruel can a criminally crafted social political entity be to its citizens who do not fit into the definition of being a citizen of such a country. It is a fact and must be understood that a minority in Pakistan is not a citizen of Pakistan, but an in-house alien who is either an enemy of the state or an impure soul whose only redemption can come from his or her joining that majority religious belief. Until then, the society is free to treat this parasite as it deems fit, and state won't have any interference to stop this humiliating attitude of the majority. The institutional, representation of non-Muslims in parliament has never crossed the number which has been reserved for them, and that's only 10. And a country where a non-Muslim is not entitled to the constitutional post of prime minister or president clearly cannot be conceived as just country. It's a country that institutionally supports criminal hate and intolerance. And if, every sovereign state, despite being a democracy, has such discriminatory legislation, we surely will be in the, end times. Pakistan is neither a democracy nor a just country. It is the antithesis of every democratic ideals that humanity wishes to achieve through a democratic nation state system. Even by adopting Islam as a state religion, I believe Pakistan has done the most disservice to the religion of Islam by portraying it as intolerant and hateful religion, which definitely it is not. Pakistan has lessons to learn from its immediate neighbor, that is our country, India, on how to empower minorities and give them the equality that they deserve in the conduct of their daily affairs. My heart, seriously, I was listening to other panelists. My heart goes out to the minorities who are living like third-class citizens in Pakistan and are facing discrimination and oppression on every front of living. India has always welcomed the minorities of its neighbors who are facing oppression and shall continue to welcome them into this diverse land, which will always value its citizens and their rights. We must hope and pray for the welfare of the long-suffering minorities of Pakistan. There is need to consolidate our efforts and energies in liberating the minorities in Pakistan from the suffrage and curses of discrimination and injustice. Thank you so much, and my special thanks to Bansa for inviting me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Junaid Mir Saab. You have given your perspective as one of the nationalist Muslim in India, and you have been a crusader for the rights of minorities anywhere in South Asian region, and we respect that. Now I
Thank you, sir.